Imagine a city, alive and thriving at sunset, completely gone by sunrise. This isn't a story of a long siege or a negotiated surrender. This is the story of Corinth, and how Rome erased it from the map in a single night. One evening, Corinth was a symphony of life. The markets were packed, wine flowed freely, and music echoed off marble walls. Its people, confident and prosperous, went to sleep believing tomorrow would be just like today. They were wrong. By dawn, the city was silent. No voices, no movement, no future. Rome made sure of that. This wasn't just another casualty of war. This was a deliberate act of annihilation. Corinth wasn't just any Greek city. It was one of the wealthiest in the Mediterranean. It controlled the vital land bridge connecting northern and southern Greece, with two ports facing two seas. Trade flowed east and west, making its merchants rich, its artists famous, and its temples overflow with offerings. Corinth was arrogant. It had outlasted kings, tyrants, and wars. It truly believed it could outlast Rome. Years earlier, Rome had conquered Greece. Macedon was crushed, and other city-states submitted. But Corinth saw itself as special. It openly mocked Roman authority, ridiculed Roman ambassadors, and treated the growing empire like a temporary problem. In one infamous incident, Corinthian citizens publicly dragged Roman envoys through the streets for sport. To Corinth, this was a show of defiance. To Rome, it was a humiliation that would never be forgotten. Rome's power wasn't in its immediate reaction, but in its patience. It waited. It watched Corinth continue to prosper, continue to defy, and continue to believe it was untouchable. Then, in 146 BCE, Rome decided Corinth's time was up. The Senate authorized action, and legions were sent. Their orders weren't to occupy the city, but to remove it from existence. The Roman army, under General Lucius Mummius, marched into Greece with terrifying discipline and silence. No threats were made, no ultimatums delivered. As the legions approached, Corinth still couldn't believe destruction was possible. This was a cultural jewel of the ancient world. Surely, Rome wouldn't dare. That belief was Corinth's final, fatal mistake. The gates were shut, the defenses manned. But when the attack came, it came without warning. Under the cover of darkness, Roman soldiers breached the walls and poured into the city like a flood. There was no distinction between soldier and civilian. Resistance collapsed in minutes. Homes were stormed, doors smashed, and families dragged screaming into the streets. Fire spread with terrifying speed, turning the night sky orange. The city's screams echoed through the narrow streets, and then, one by one, they were silenced. The Roman soldiers moved methodically, street by street, house by house. They weren't fighting for victory, they were completing an order. Every man found was killed on the spot. Temples were looted, their treasures and art either smashed or packed for transport to Rome. The women and children who survived the night were rounded up at dawn. They weren't allowed to rebuild. They were chained and sold into slavery, scattered across the vast Roman Empire. Their city left an empty shell behind them. By sunrise, Corinth was unrecognizable. Smoke drifted over silent ruins, and bodies left where they fell. Every man was dead. Every woman and child enslaved. The city had simply ceased to exist. Rome didn't rebuild it. They left the ruins untouched for decades, a stark and visible warning. Grass grew through the shattered streets where merchants once traded. The message was clear to anyone who passed by. Defy Rome, and you will disappear. The destruction of Corinth sent a shockwave across the Mediterranean. Cities that had considered rebellion rushed to submit. Rome didn't need to repeat the lesson. Corinth was destroyed, not because it was a military threat, but because it was a symbol. Rome needed to prove the consequences of defiance. The night Corinth fell wasn't a battle. It was a warning, written in fire and blood, to the entire world. Once a city becomes a lesson, there is no rebuilding what remains. Thanks for watching.